Why is it that you can give a woman your loyalty, your time, your soul, and she still doesn't connect with you the way you crave? Why does she bond with the man who challenges her, not the one who comforts her? Why does she open her heart to the one who isn't always available, but stay emotionally distant from the one who never leaves? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Women don't form emotional bonds from effort. They form them from energy. And only certain energies awaken that part of her. It's not about being the nicest guy in the room. It's about being the most anchored, the most truthful, the most centered in yourself. Because she can't emotionally bond with you if you're not bonded with you. She doesn't want a man who makes her feel right. She wants a man who makes her feel real. This video isn't about tricks. It's about truth. About understanding what actually creates emotional magnetism. And how your presence, not your performance, is what creates lasting connection. If you've ever felt unseen despite giving your best, it's time to stop chasing and start choosing you. Let's get into what really makes her bond forever. Why does it feel like the more emotionally available and kind you are, the less deeply she connects? You're doing what you were told is right. Being open, gentle, always present. You're trying to be safe, to be supportive, and still something's missing. She seems appreciative, maybe even affectionate, but not bonded, not deeply pulled in, not emotionally addicted to your presence. And that hurts. Here's the part no one told you. Emotional bonds aren't formed in comfort alone. They're formed in emotional stimulation, in challenge, in growth. Not games, not manipulation, but in being a man who doesn't just comfort her pain, but invites her into emotional elevation. To learn, ask yourself this: are you listening to her just to keep peace? Or are you challenging her gently when her patterns show up? A woman bonds deeply with the man who helps her grow, not the one who just nods through her emotional loops. When you reflect her patterns with grounded energy, when you stand in your truth without attacking hers, she starts to feel something new. She feels seen, not just heard. And being truly seen is what sparks emotional craving. Think about it. The teachers, mentors, or lovers you remember most weren't the ones who always agreed with you. They were the ones who made you think, the ones who held you to a higher standard without breaking your spirit. That's the kind of emotional challenge women bond with, safe but strong. Women don't want to fix you, they want to feel you. And when you offer more than validation, when you offer vision, edge, and truth, you become unforgettable. The safest space for a woman's emotions isn't built by compliance. It's built by emotional presence that has depth. And that begins the moment you stop trying to be nice and start being real. So choose yourself first, not to harden, but to anchor. Because the man who helps her grow without losing himself becomes the man she can't replace. Why does it seem like the more you give, the more she expects, and the less she appreciates? You're generous, you're attentive. You try to be the man who never makes her question her worth, but somehow, the more you show up, the more she tests you. She gets moodier, less affectionate, more distant. And it confuses you because you thought being available and supportive would bring her closer, not make her pull away. But here's a truth most men never hear. Women don't emotionally bond with men they can control. They bond with men they respect. And respect doesn't come from over-accommodation. It comes from boundaries, from direction, from energy that says, I see you, but I also see myself, and I'm not abandoning either. If you become the man who tiptoes around her emotions to avoid conflict, she may feel comfort, but she won't feel connection. Because deep down, she's not looking for someone who just agrees. She's looking for someone who can hold his ground. A man who responds, not reacts, who listens but doesn't shrink. Have you ever caught yourself walking on eggshells just to keep her happy? That's not love. That's fear disguised as devotion, and it slowly erodes your self-respect. When you start choosing your truth over her temporary mood, everything shifts. You become less reactive, more grounded, and that shift, subtle but powerful, makes her lean in. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've reminded her of something rare. A man who can love her without losing himself. Respect is the doorway to emotional bonding. And the moment you stop asking, how can I keep her? And start asking, how can I keep me? You become that man. So don't fear her pulling back when you show strength. Fear losing yourself trying to earn what should be mutual. Because when you stand firm in who you are without needing to be chosen, you become the one she chooses differently, not out of convenience, but out of reverence. And that starts with choosing you, now and always. Why does it feel like every time she gets upset, you're the one who has to shrink, apologize, or carry the emotional weight? You silence your own needs just to keep the peace. You walk on emotional eggshells, hoping she won't withdraw or explode. And each time you do, a small piece of you disappears. You start wondering, is this what being a good man looks like? But deep down, something doesn't sit right. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A woman cannot emotionally bond with a man who abandons himself to soothe her. She might rely on you, she might like the control, but she won't respect it. And without respect, there is no lasting emotional connection. You think you're being the bigger person by always compromising, but are you really being big or just disappearing? There is nothing emotionally attractive about a man who sacrifices his own peace to avoid confrontation. That doesn't make you emotionally intelligent. It makes you emotionally submissive. And she feels it. She knows when you're shrinking. She senses when you've lost your edge. And it's that edge, your calm, grounded presence, that she was drawn to in the first place. Imagine a moment where she's spiraling emotionally, throwing accusations or withdrawing affection. What would it look like if you didn't panic or chase? What would change if you stayed calm, didn't try to fix her emotions, and just held your ground without disconnecting? You'd feel powerful, and more importantly, she'd feel safe. Because a woman only bonds deeply when she knows her storm won't sink your ship. Not when you rescue her, but when you don't drown with her. Let that be your shift. You don't need to be reactive to be loving. You don't need to absorb her pain to prove your care. You simply need to stay connected to your center, even when it's hard. Because the man who doesn't abandon himself during emotional chaos becomes the one she looks at differently, not because he gave more, but because he stayed whole. Choose yourself. That's where real connection begins. Have you ever felt like no matter how much you try to impress her through compliments, gifts, achievements, she still seems emotionally distant? You show up, you over-deliver, you try to become her ideal version of a man, but something doesn't click. You keep wondering, what else can I do to make her feel connected to me? And slowly, that question starts to exhaust you. Because here's the truth. She's not bonding with your performance. She's waiting to feel your presence. Women don't emotionally attach to a checklist of good deeds. They bond with depth, with soul, with the raw, unpolished man who speaks his truth, even if it's messy, not the one who tries to be perfect. Are you being the real you, or are you just auditioning for her approval? The man she bonds with doesn't perform, he connects. He doesn't tell her what he thinks she wants to hear. He says what's real, calmly, clearly, without needing a reaction. And that authenticity, that's what reaches her heart. Not your job title, not your bank account, not even your charm. You. Think about this. How often do you share your truth without editing it to make her more comfortable? How often do you pause, breathe, and say something that's real, even if it's risky? That's where connection lives, in the truth, in your emotional availability, not to fix her, but to be with her. The most addictive men aren't the most impressive. They're the most anchored. The ones who know who they are, who don't hide behind strategies, who speak with quiet confidence and deep clarity. If you want her to bond, don't perform, reveal. Let her meet the man behind the armor. That's who she'll stay up thinking about. That's who she'll emotionally crave. You don't need to do more, you just need to be more of yourself. And that starts the moment you stop proving and start choosing to show up real, raw, and rooted. Because the path to her heart isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming present. And the only way to be fully present is to never abandon yourself. Have you ever felt like you were giving her everything? Your time, your affection, your energy, yet somehow she still seemed emotionally guarded? You compliment her, you listen, you validate every emotion. You think you're doing all the right things to make her feel safe, open, connected, but instead of growing closer, she starts pulling away. Her energy becomes colder, her response is shorter, and inside you're left asking, why am I doing so much and still not enough? The answer is subtle but powerful. Women don't form deep emotional bonds from constant validation. They bond when they feel safe to be vulnerable. And safety isn't just about agreement. It's about being present in a way that makes her feel held, even when she's messy, even when she's wrong, even when her emotions aren't easy to carry. But here's the twist. That emotional safety only works when you're emotionally safe within yourself. You can't give her safety if you're constantly abandoning your own. If you're afraid to call out disrespect, if you hide your frustration, if you avoid conflict just to keep her happy, then you're not building connection, you're building resentment, and she can feel it. Have you ever sat quietly while she said something that hurt and you said nothing just to avoid tension? That silence doesn't make her feel loved. It makes her feel distant from the real you. A woman bonds when she senses that you can handle her vulnerability. But that begins with handling your own truth. That means having hard conversations with calmness. That means showing her that your love comes with boundaries. That means being emotionally still in the middle of her emotional chaos. You don't need to rescue her, you need to receive her without losing your center. Because the deepest emotional connection isn't built through pleasing, it's built through presence. And presence is born from a man who knows how to hold his own emotions before trying to carry someone else's. Choose yourself first. That's not selfish, it's safety. Because when you become safe within yourself, you become the safest place you've ever known. And that's the kind of bond no one can